Okay, so as we spoke about last week, we were trying to obviously get down a very nice decent coat of primer onto this. Trouble was, because of this hot weather we're having currently, we had to thin and we had to use retarders and flow improvers into the actual primer coat itself. Downside to that is it made it very, very wet, and to be honest, we did have some nasty runs. Now, 9 times out of 10, you can look around your model and you might think, oh, I've got little imperfections here, I want to take care of those and make them better. Because don't forget, the whole point of doing any type of primer work whatsoever is to be in a situation where you can see how it's going to turn out when you get paint on there. So if you're in a position where you're looking at it and you've got a seam line, a join, a fingerprint, now's the time to take care of it, because quite frankly you can sand, buff and polish, no problem at all, and then you can put down more primer or straight into paint or whatever you want to do. Now the big problem we have with this particular one, you might be able to see here, I've done some light sanding to it already. We had a run come off the tail. You can actually see where the paint didn't physically stick to the tail here and has run out of all these panel lines and just made its way down, and it's run down the front here. So we're using the black sticks for this, so light coarse one to start with. This is to actually get rid of the area affected itself, okay, as you can see. Alright, then we're just going to flick over to the polisher side just to buff it all together. Now we had to wait 3 days for this, as we spoke about before. This is the polyurethane filler, where if you try to do this before, all that happens is it rolls up like we spoke about the PVA glue. So it is important to leave it. Been sanding it now, no problem at all. Then we come in with a buffer. Now this is just to give us a nice feathered textured edge between the two, gets rid of all the scratching that's perhaps been made by the sanding sticks and everything else. Alright, so what we want to do is just blend those nicely in. You know when it is, you can't feel it is always the good clue. Okay, now a couple of other areas we had down here. I've got a nice little dollop where it's again run out of this seam down here and come down to here. Now to be honest, what you didn't see on camera, my own fault, I hung this way up with some clamps holding it for it to dry nicely. Unfortunately, everything went south. Hence whilst that had a run there, we had a run down here, and I've already done the one on this side. We had a run up here down there. So it is, you know, one of those things. Keep them flat, you avoid the runs, so to speak, just like that. So happy with that at the top. This one down here is a little bit more tricky because it's in quite an awkward area. So what we're going to try and do is just lightly sand out the affected part. Okay, but it's not proving too easy to do, purely because where it is. So what I'm gonna think we'll have a try at, we're just gonna grab a little bit of thinners, just looking for something a little bit more aggressive here. We're gonna use a cellulose thinners. Okay, so we're just putting it on a cotton bud. Now the thing is, this will eat this. Okay, so just take your time. A little bit of a wipe, but as you can probably see the black coming through, this is that primer we had before. So what we're going to try and do is just take out a little bit of height out of this. Just like so. Okay, so we're happy with it. Okay, now because we've softened all of this up using this stuff, what we want to do, first of all, make sure your lids are on because of the smell. But we want to do with this now is let this dry totally before we come in and sand it, because it's softened everything. Okay, so it's going to take a little bit just to get on. Whilst that's doing, we can have a good look around and see exactly how we are. Now we're a little bit rough underneath, so we're going to be using our sanding sponge just to go round and sand this off, and we're going to look at some of the areas we thought we might have a few little problems with. So for instance, we sanded and filled these little holes up the top here for these external pylons, the one that goes to the far side. They're fine, they've gone totally. So what we're trying to do now is just smoothing this out, because we're going to be spraying quite an aggressive coat of white paint over this shortly. So we need it to be quite nice and smooth on here, because to spray white, one of the quick ways is to really thicken up the paint and have it quite thick. Okay, so we're just giving that a gentle sand off. everywhere. Because what we're going to have to do is come back with another coat, but now feeling it, we are nice and smooth as we go through. So we're going to just do the same with this guy down here. Sand that one off. Now we're just going to touch this, see how it is. Doesn't look to be too bad. So what we're going to do now, come in with the finer side. And again, what we're trying to do is just open all of this up. You can probably see we've got a little bit of rolling happening, and this is because the primer has gone soft. Okay, so what we're trying to do is just do a bit more coarseness to it. Okay, then we're going to come in with our various gilets. See if we can polish them out a little bit. There we go, that's very aggressive sounding on there, but we seem to be all okay. So what we're going to do, we're going to try and risk this one a little bit. So we've got our airbrush, extractor on, okay, good old shake up with the primer. I'm going to do this half and half over the next sort of hour. I'm going to do the bottom side with you guys now, and then later on I'll do the top side and then meet up when we get back for pre-shading. All we're going to do, pop in a little bit of this in, flow improver, just a few drops, 10 drops I always find is good for half a cup, 20 drops if you're doing it in a full 5mm colour cup like that. And to be honest, don't worry about flow improvers and enhancers. It won't affect anything. You're not going to ruin your paint. It's not going to go funny. Just remember it's acrylic, so don't try using enamel ones in acrylic paints, vice versa, things like that. All it does is slow down the actual drying time of the paint. From our point of view, when it's airborne, it's just going to slow it down a little. So okay, we're just going to grab it from the back, same as we did before. Nice, even strokes. Nice and smooth. We're not trying to change the world with this paint. We've eaten that up very quick. Okay, because it's quite wet, what we're going to do is just drying it off now. Just cut to air. What this will do is enable it to get a skin on the surface of the primer so you can put it down and not worry too much about it. Okay. There we go, and now we're going to do the other bit of the wing. I thought I'd have enough just to do the underside. Sorry, find the hose. Turn that off just for a minute and get going. But there we go, that's our phantom done under there, just like that. And as I said, it's one of those areas you just take your time and build it up. We're going to do the same with it. Come back, get this other bit of the wing done, do this top one just down here, same onto the other side, spray those in. All happy, check it over everywhere. Anywhere it needs some more, we'll get another coat. Any sanding or anything else like that, any imperfections we'll take care of now, and then we'll come back shortly where we can get on with the pre-shading. Okay, so primer all done now. Really, really happy we came out. These areas down here where we had a bit of a gap and a run down there, no problem at all. Same with this one on the spine, totally gone now, okay. And we had this other very nasty drip just down here. Now they're all absolutely fine. Had a good look over it, really happy of how we are now. We've got no problems with it anyway. It's a lovely smooth finish to this one. So next up, what we're going to do is actually start the weathering process. Now to do that, this is what we call pre-shading. Now I've covered it a lot in other videos, but we'll have a quick recap now. Pre-shading is basically just a way of causing a weathering effect in your next coat of paintwork, i.e. in our case for the underside it's going to be white, a couple of areas on the top are going to be white, and obviously the tail. What this actually does, by putting down a darker colour first, it acts like a shadow. Now the shadow then gives a grime look to it, it breaks it up, and it makes it look a lot more natural. A couple of things, and to dispel a couple of myths. First of all, it doesn't have to be neat. You don't have to be good at it. In theory, I must admit, I hate to say this, but many a time I'll go around show circuits and I'll see some pre-shading, which is absolutely fantastic, but unfortunately it's too good and looks fake and horrible. As in, each panel line, as they've gone round and they've put all the panel lines in a dark colour, is absolutely perfect, and because it's perfect and too universal, it looks like a grid on the model. So perhaps underneath here you'll have a situation perhaps around some, you know, heavy panel lines on the bottom. It's exactly the same on both wings and everything else like that. What you want it to be is more sort of natural and in nature. So perhaps you'll come along and have a nice heavy line, and then it goes thin a bit and it goes a little bit wonky and everything else. That way it just makes it look a lot better and a lot more believable than having a perfect grid on the bottom of your actual aircraft. So, enabled to do this, what we're going to use, you can use any darker colour than the original shade you come in. So I know a lot of guys will use things like dark greys. Obviously I tend to use black, okay, and work your way through. But you can use anything from a brown to a green, and so forth and so on. I've used them all in various videos in the past. Now for this we're going to be using the Infinity Airbrush. No other reason apart from I've bent the needle on the other one, so it's out of action for a couple of days. So this has got the 0.2, exactly the same as the last airbrush had, the Evo. Okay, and all the settings are exactly the same. It has got all these fancy gizmos on the back, which I don't actually use, so don't worry about it. The paint we're going to be using is XF1 flat. Because it's extremely hot in the UK, as we've been talking about this model at the moment, it's 32 degrees out there at the moment, I am going to be using quite a lot of Flow Improver. Now this is basically a retarder. It slows down the drying of paint, as we've spoken about in the other ones. Okay, so we're going to be using Vallejo thinners as well, and we'll be shooting this quite a high air pressure, as you'll see, literally just around about the, I don't know, probably around about the 20 psi mark, something else like that, 18, 20 psi. A little bit of retarder I'm just putting in through. As you can probably see, we've probably got, I don't know, not quarter of a mil, something like that in there. Okay, then we're going to put in a drop of thinners, equal amount. So we've got equal amount of thinners to retarder, purely because it is so hot here in the UK. Okay, and then what we're going to do, we're going to do equal amount again of our paint, so it's like a 50-50 mix. So we've got 25% Flow Improver, 25% thinners, and then 50% paint. Alright, make sure it gets a good old mix up in the colour cup. It's important to make sure that retarder is going around absolutely everywhere. Okay, and then what you want to do is test your pressures and your various things. Okay, so we're moving the model out of the way. Just for the moment, what we're going to do is just going to come in and we're just going to see how it's all working. So we want it to be in a situation where we're getting pretty much a constant flow all the time. But if you're not used to using flow improvers, things like that, it will act slightly different, okay? So just be a little bit more careful. It is going to be a bit more wet as you spray this down. Now what we're going to do, we're going to start with the big areas first. Okay, so what I do, I pick out big joints. So we've got a wing break down here for the wing fold, gets extremely dirty. Things around the flaps, the ailerons, the gear doors, they get it quite heavy. And this centre area of the model is always very, very heavy on a Phantom. There's lots of oil leaks, lots of hydraulic leaking, streaking, dirt and grime. Okay, so that's something that we'll try and pick up on. So I tend to hold it in a gun grip, so I tend to have one hand underneath, okay? Pushing all the way for air, a little bit for paint, and just go along. And then what we're going to do is put these in. Okay, so big lines, big paintwork. Okay, so you've got a big panel line, give it lots of paint. The thinner the panel line, the less you want to really give it. Okay, so we're just going to come around these areas here. Okay. So nice big ones along these flap the ailerons and that. We've got a little panel line comes down the back. Just a bit this speed brake area. Okay, gear doors. Now the other thing you may be noticing, I'm not doing it too sharp. It's not like you know, a situation where you've got a perfectly rock hard panel line. I'm trying to do it very light. so it all blends in. Okay, we don't want it to be in a situation where we've got panel lines that are so strong underneath. It should be a faded effect rather than a hard line. Okay, we want it to be sort of to fade in. We want it to blend. Something like this. Okay, start coming down. Hook area down here, so we're going to give that quite a bit. Two panel lines in one just down here, so we sort of do both together around this missile rail. And then what we're going to do is just go around now, take our time and pick out all of these. Got these auxiliary doors. Perhaps you see a panel, you know, a little access door, just give it a bit of a spray. Big old panel line there. This one here. Now this one at the rear is going to be metalwork, but we can fade it all in together. Okay, then we're back up through the middle. Just like so. Air pressure is basically not flicking it out enough, so what you want to do, grab yourself a cloth, okay, and then just clean off the needle. As soon as it starts to stop, pump it out onto a spare piece, okay, and just make sure your needle's clear. If you get a little bit of build up on the needle, then it'll tend to jam your airbrush. Okay, so we've got this riveting, it's quite faded, but we've got the panel line just down here. So to get the more faded one, just move away. For the tighter ones, you just move in. So we've got these down here. Going on. So you've got a bit of a mixture down there in both. And all we're going to do is carry this on right the way over the entire model. So we're going absolutely everywhere with it. So as I said, start with these big ones first, and then perhaps down here you've got some riveting detail on this aileron. Then just come along, just give it some light work, okay? Little light passes. Have a look for various things. Got some riveting detail down here. We've got these access points where we have the hard point that we sanded over, so we're just going to give those a little bit. We've got another hard point going to be going on here for these missile rails. We'll do those. But really, you're just trying to work your way around everywhere, okay, and give it that sort of griminess. So when this white goes over the top, we'll still be able to see this through. It's quite a long, laborious job. So what I'm going to do is carry on without you, okay, and then we'll meet up the end when we've totally finished it everywhere. Okay, so there we go. There's our pre-shading all done on there. As I said, nothing particularly pretty or nice. It's more for purpose than it is for the look of it all. But as you can see down here, we've got a little bit more faded, a little bit more sharper and heavier on the top because obviously we've got a darker colour. The light on the white will show through very easily, but obviously up here we've got the light gold grey. Take a little bit more to get that going. Now, spraying white is our next option. Okay, so starting with the lightest colour first, so when you're painting, we've got to do the entire underside. We have to do the tail, because we've got a coloured tail, okay? The tail planes have got to be done, and we've got to do the tops of the flaps and the actual ailerons as well. They are all white in this particular case. Now, the thing is, the nose, some of them are white as well, but this particular one is going to be the light gold grey down there as well. Normally my paint of choice would be Tamiya XF2 flat white. I find it covers the best. I don't have any issues with it whatsoever. What I tend to do is a very thick coat to start with. So normally in this type of weather we'd need retarder in there, but for you know, basic practices, probably only 10% thinners to paint for the first one with white coat right the way over. Second one a 50-50 mix. 2 coats will take care of this totally. This time I thought we'd do it a little bit different, okay? So what we're going to use is Vallejo's Model Air. This is the 001 white, okay? I have got a little stainless steel nut in there, okay? And that is purely to give it a good mix up. Normally I don't use this stuff because I find it's a little bit problematic, but I thought we would show everything warts and all with this build, so we'll try some of the other stuff. So a little bit of airbrush, or thinners in this case, just into the airbrush, blowing it all out. Okay. Now we are going to use a tiny bit of retarder purely because of the heat today. Normally I would use this neat straight into the colour cup and away we go. Alright, so our little flow improver, same as we did really with the pre-shading, so we're just doing a tiny bit in there. Okay, but we're not going to put any thinners, we're going to use it as a thinner. I think I've got a little bit too much in there, so I'm just going to blow some out. Turn on that, might draw it out a bit better. You'll notice a smell with this stuff, but quite a smell that gets in the back of your throat. Okay, if you get your little bit of hucky stuff on the top, make sure you clean that off before you squirt it in, because you don't want any build-up to go down in your colour cup, otherwise you're going to cause no end of trouble. Now this is coming out like yogurt where it's so hot. You can probably see it in there. If we was to spray this without the retarder, I think it would have a real problem. So because it's using this retarder, make sure you give it a good mix. Don't try and just do a half-hearted stir with a cocktail stick. You're going to need a brush in there to really break it all up to make this stuff work. Make sure you get right down where the needle is as well, and that'll stop it getting blockages. As I said, temperature inside here, I've just put a thermometer in, we're at 34 degrees inside this room. A lot of that is to do with the, turn that off for a moment, to do with these studio lights. I've got 2 studio lights, got one above me, okay, which is 1800 watt, and I've got one to the side of me, 1800 watt, and I've got daylight and sun beating the hell out of me behind the blinds behind me. So all in all, it's pretty warm in here. Normally I wouldn't even attempt to spray in this heat, but you know, really we're getting a little bit behind here, so I want to get on with it. So checking your flow, we'll do it just off with the spray booth off just a second. So what we're going to do, first pass going down, alright, so make sure that you're happy with the paint as it's coming out. Little light pass over, okay, and nothing more than that. You just want to make a light pass, because what we want to do is build this up quite gently, okay? So we're just going to come down here. Now don't worry if it's a bit spiky at the moment, we'll worry about that later. Okay, and what we're going to do is do a gradual hiding of the actual pre-shading, because the area you want to get to is just where it disappears, okay, and then you leave it, and then it will then, it looks like it's white and the black sort of bleeds through and shows through again, okay? So we're just going to show you and just take our time going through, alright? So we're just going to come over this again, but because it's got the retarder in, it's going to take its time over everything, okay? It's going to take its time to dry, so don't think you can just come along like you normally do with your paintwork, okay, and spray this on. So if I do it on this wing, so we put down a coat, okay, and you see this where it just disappears like there, alright? If you stop and you wait, it will come back. So if I spray the other side, hopefully it will come back as I spray, and you'll see it showing through as this all dries. Okay, so we've got rid of our edges all here. Just taking our time, not trying to rush it at all. But as you can probably see now, underneath we've got this pre-shading coming through. It's coming through quite heavily on this wing, more than the other wing, okay? But we're just going to leave it just for a moment and just see exactly what happens. So we're going to do this tail, so we've got to do up here. Because we've got a primer on here, it's not too bad, okay? If it's unprimed, you might have trouble with your Vallejo paint. Just take it easy with it, spray nice light coats, build it up gently. Make sure you do your edges. So again, just let it disappear on the tail, and then we're going to let it come back. Now, we've got a couple of funny things going on with the tail here. Because obviously we've got some nice big colourful markings. Tops of these, whoops, steady. A little bit of blockage just happening there. Go away if that's happened, start somewhere else. Okay, we're just going to blow in these doors just down the back here. There we go, and we're out of paint. So there we go, that's our first pass in. We're going to come in with a second pass in a moment, exactly the same, okay, with a mixture of retarder and paint. If you're in a situation where it's normal, you know, you're not cooking, you won't need the retarder, okay, but just gently build it up. You might want to just replace it with a few drops of thinners just to help it all go along. But as you can see, that pre-shading is coming through there and giving us exactly what we want, because by the time we do a little bit of post-shading is what goes in afterwards, so we get those decals to look a little bit more grimy and some sort of dirty streaking underneath the belly of the Phantom. It should all come back. But as you can see, we've done along the bottom half here, because obviously we're going to have a line coming through both halves and everything else, but hopefully you can see it's giving us that nice type of grimy look to it. So we're going to let that one dry off. It's not going to take long today. Come back, second coat, very light coat, quite a wet coat, which we'll show you in a moment, just to make it look very nice under here. And as I say, make sure that these two ailerons and flaps are done, and this rudder and tail are all done as well, all ready for painting.